Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Bob Honer of Anaplan. We're going to be having a conversation about connected supply chain planning, how it relates to manufacturers, helps them do their job better. I'm really excited for this conversation. Bob, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to be with you.
Bob, why don't we start off by saying what connected supply chain planning actually is? If we're going to have a conversation about it, let's make sure we're on the same page.
Good point. Let's begin with the definition. So, as a topic, we've been talking about this a long time, this concept of connected supply chain planning. It's been called many things. It's been called S&OE, IBP, but we like to think of it as connected planning. And essentially, it's about getting the whole company and sometimes outside the company all aligned on one plan as opposed to all managing to individual plans.
Okay, so if we were going to describe some of the features of connected supply chain planning as opposed to how people just sort of, hey, I've got suppliers and I've got service and solution providers and maybe I've got a 3PL helping me here, like what is actually connected supply chain planning so that I could say my company has it and his company doesn't?
Good point. So one thing when I think of connected planning, I don't think of the solution as much as the people. And connected planning is always going to be an executive-led business activity. So if I'm dealing with tactical plans, with execution-level plans, I'm not doing connected planning.
Okay. And if I were to say the advantages of connected supply chain planning are at the strategic level or the tactical level or throughout the organization, like where are the real benefits from having it?
So the beauty is that the benefits come at all levels. So I'm aligning both my top-down plans and my bottom-up plans. So if I do connected planning well, I've got my end-to-end business plans in line with my mid-level tactical plans, and I'm executing to those same plans. Again, it's all about managing to one plan as opposed to multiple plans.
I imagine the connected part of connected supply chain planning is actually a communication strategy or a tool. Can we get into that a little bit?
It is. So to be able to do connected planning effectively, we need a tool that is agnostic to the data that's being managed, that's being collected, that's being acted upon. And, that's actually a place that Anaplan excels at because natively, we began in the financial planning space and found that if we have a system that is scalable enough to handle financial data, it also lends itself well to supply chain data. And so having a system that is able to handle that level of complexity, that level of scalability, is foundational to a connected planning system.
I think I'm right in saying, the reason it has to be agnostic is because nobody is starting from square one with this. They've got systems in place, and then they're looking for something that can communicate across different silos.
Jeff, that's exactly the case. Nobody begins with a connected planning system. It's always taking the individual puzzle pieces and combining them into one system.
I wonder if we could talk about this using the example of disruption. Connected supply chain planning has to be helping supply chain planners and manufacturers execute in a world of increased disruption. Can we talk about that a little bit?
What a timely question. I've been saying lately that I don't think we've had as exciting a time to be in supply chain as now. Now, sadly, a lot of the news that you see at the moment with supply chain is negative. It's with issues that have come up. But just taking an example that's affected us all lately, when we look at what happened as we led into COVID, and then again as we led out of COVID, companies using connected planning got to see that something was going on that they couldn't explain. And they did that in less time and with less manual activity than companies that did not. So specifically what we saw is the systems had been able to identify that this is something that isn't localized, it's affecting us globally. It's not just tied to one specific company, one specific business, even one specific segment. It was endemic, if you will, and could act on that quickly. What we also saw was that companies who took the suggestions of the connected planning system didn't have the bullwhip effect that we typically see with people manually attempting to adjust to black swan type events. On the flip side, as we came out of COVID and saw the changes that took place in demand, same thing. The people who had connected planning systems and could behave in a hands-off way typically had less noise and less tail chasing, if you will, than those that did not. So that's a timely example of how connected planning systems can help, even if it's an event that we wouldn't typically be able to see coming, if you will.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what makes Anaplan a leader in this space. I know you said you started with financial data, and that is robust enough. If it works for finance, it works for supply chain. But when I think of all the tools out there that help supply chain and manufacturing executives do their job, what separates Anaplan from the herd?
Yeah. So, Jeff, as you mentioned, this is quite a congested space at the moment, and as you investigate supply chain solutions, as you come to events, it sounds like all of the companies say the same thing. So it can be tough to identify the uniqueness between solutions. What I've noticed with Anaplan, the uniqueness comes down to two things. One is the concept, what we call business owned. So a business owned solution. This is significant because as soon as you implement a solution, guess what? The business changed, you didn't get exactly what you wanted, and then you have to adapt to a tool. With Anaplan, the business itself, the people using the tool, can make the changes, can make the updates, and make the modifications. And that's a huge selling point. The second thing I'd like to highlight is, again, going back to that connected planning vision. Today, companies don't exist in a vacuum. Business functions don't exist in a vacuum. We need to manage to one plan. And Anaplan is ideally suited to do that one plan vision, if you will.
What should executives be keeping in mind when they think how they're going to roll this out? We're at the starting line, and 3 months, 6 months, a year, this is how I'm going to make this work for me. What are some questions they should be asking themselves? What should they be visualizing? What is the thought process?
Yeah, I think it does all begin with that executive involvement. If this isn't something that's being pushed top down, it's going to be a challenge to be successful. The next thing is change management. It's easy to buy a tool and think that that's going to fix all of my ills. But the fact is, it's the people that actually fix the issues. So having an eye to that change management at the beginning is going to be a huge help. And then giving people a stake in the solution, meaning having the team that's going to be using the tool involved at the beginning will help so much with that buy-in.
What is the working relationship with Anaplan? So I appreciate you say it's a business-driven solution. My company has this challenge, and I'm actually inputting what I'm trying to get out of it. But presumably this isn't a turnkey thing. I haven't bought it from you, and I never speak to you again. How does Anaplan work with its clients to help them realize their journey?
Yeah, it's not exactly like that. It's not exactly buying something off the shelf like Excel and then off you go. So with Anaplan, you have two options essentially. Anaplan can lead the implementation, and then we also deal with a lot of consulting companies and SIs who have specific capabilities. So if you have a specific solution that you want to implement, if you have a specific segment that you want to be involved in, that they can help with that. So with Anaplan, you have the two options between Anaplan-led and then SI-led implementations.
Whenever I get talking about whether it's software or maybe supply chain strategy, I want to take a minute and talk about the people who are involved in this, because there are people whose day-to-day job is going to be changed, hopefully for the better. But let's walk through sort of the experience of the supply chain or manufacturing executive who is using this tool now. How is their day-to-day changing, and what should they look forward to?
Yeah, well, they should absolutely plan on getting a lot of time back. If we finish an Anaplan implementation and the executives, the team involved, have not gotten time back, we've missed the objective with that. So they should plan on spending less time on developing the plan, coming up with the plan, and spend time on executing the plan. So that's one objective. Obviously, we could talk ad nauseum about the financial implications and benefits and the cost savings and those things, but I do think the people impact is one of the most significant.
Well, and I hope most people would say, if I'm freed from doing the data analytics side to doing the execution and troubleshooting side, I will demonstrate ROI.
I don't think anyone would complain about being able to focus less on the math and the behind the scenes at all. I think that's always a win.
Yeah, I know we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation, Bob. If there are 2 or 3 things that you want to highlight for people and make them think about a little further, what should we underline for them?
I've often thought about that, about if I was on that side of the table, what would I want to be focused on? And I think it comes down to a lot of solutions could do what I need, but what am I going to be the most successful with, and hopefully with the least amount of heavy lifting? And I think that's a place that Anaplan excels. In weeks and months, we can have a system live and giving benefit. And I think that's a key piece. Something else I would highlight is just begin. Just begin. In the amount of time that we can take to investigate an issue and plan out an issue, we could begin seeing tangible benefits. And we've got to begin someplace.
For people who have been listening to this and may have a few questions, want to learn more, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, well, one, I hope they contact us, and the easiest way to do that is on the website, www.anaplan.com.
Okay, well, I encourage everybody to check out that website. I think it's a very powerful tool, and clearly they have got people like Bob who really know what they're talking about. Bob, I really appreciate your time today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Jeff.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.